Rick Colley is also here.
Oh.
He wasn't polled.
You walk in. Rick Colley?
Just for the record.
Apologize for that, Rick. So, public comment. Identify yourself, try to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and hopefully it's under our jurisdiction.
Friends of Del Norte, Vice President, and I'm taking this opportunity to comment on the RTP since the deadline is current. And I'd like to say that we have been provided no explanation, nor you, the Commission, about what happened to the original draft plan released back in March. We have been provided no response to any of the public comments that were received on that document, and that we have been provided no explanation of what, if anything, is different about this new release draft plan. After careful consideration, our analysis really tries to bring home the urgency and importance of improving our transportation plans, and business as usual is not acceptable if the communities across California expect to have any chance of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and doing their share to keep this planet habitable. An increase in VMT and truck traffic per capita would be contrary to our goals and have a negative effect on performance measures, and would thus represent a major failure of the regional transportation planning process. Assuming such increases at the outset calls into question the purpose of planning at all. Furthermore, this approach cannot be justified by the new draft RTP's claim that VMT projections allow estimates of how socioeconomic changes will impact travel demand in the county, projecting huge increases in VMT so that slightly smaller increases can be counted on as reductions is not a serious planning framework, but merely a shell game. First, it is important to acknowledge the fact that the county accounts for a very small fraction of global greenhouse gas emissions does not mean that its emissions are not meaningful, measurable, nor noticeable. And although greenhouse gas inventories specific to the county do not yet exist, rural areas such as Del Norte generally have higher greenhouse gas emissions per capita than urban areas. This fact makes a strong case that the new draft RTP should take the mandate to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at least as seriously as large metropolitan areas. The new draft RTP contains some strong goals, objectives, and policies pertaining to greenhouse gas emissions to ensure that transportation projects do not contribute to increased vehicle emissions. However, Objective 3.9, 3.3 seems to scale back the RTP's ambition, reduce or maintain greenhouse gas emissions from transportation-related sources.
I'm going to ask you to try and wrap it up, please.
Okay. I'd just like to go, maintaining greenhouse gas emissions means that they will continue to contribute to the overall exceedances which are causing climate change and its impacts. Perhaps I can go through some other issues at another point. At another point in time.
Great, thank you, Eileen. Appreciate it. Would you please set the timer for the public? Next, please.
Yeah, my name's Don Gillespie, speaking for the Friends of Del Norte County. And I'm wondering, can any of the commissioners explain to the community why the draft regional transportation plan was re-released on September 9th for public comment?
So this is your turn to make public comment, not for question and answering period.
You can't answer questions.
Your time, public comment, please.
Well, is there an answer to a question?
So your public comment is that
Yeah, I know.
you
You've
can't
said
get a
that twice. I understand.
Okay.
I understand. So there's no answers to a question as why it was re-released from the transportation commissioners? And another question, I was wondering if anybody could explain what's going to happen to the public comment that was made on the first draft regional transportation plan. So I'm kind of surprised that public comment is not a time to answer a question. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you. So just for clarification, public comment has never been a time to answer questions. If somebody has questions, it's best to submit them or discuss with staff so we can either agendize it and have a good discussion there, but it's not a time for banter or questioning and answering back and forth. Any other public comment, please?
Yeah, my name is Janet Gilbert. I'm a county resident. I'm addressing the public comment period because I really can't find this RTP plan on the agenda. So I think I need to address it now. It doesn't seem to be listed succinctly here. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I am commenting on the re-release of the RTP draft. I commented on the original draft. I can't seem to find my comments included anywhere in this re-release or the response to the comments. I commented about the need to identify the STAA 199 project in its entirety as the draft piecemealed it. I find that still seems to be the case in the re-release. That's against CEQA rules to fragment a project. I commented that the #1 priority regarding transportation in Del Norte County is last chance grade. The new document mentions last chance grade, but it doesn't focus on it. It doesn't make it clear that this is what we're really desiring, is to fix this road. We've got a governor who's given us like an emergency status on fixing this road, and we're not promoting that in our new transportation plan. If we're not crazy about getting this done, why should they give us the money that says it's really an emergency for us? It's not our top priority. It's not emphasized anywhere. It's just kind of in there. 199, 197 is a huge component of our tourist industry and our recreation. It is the Smith River National Recreation Area. We must protect the safety of ourselves and our guests and our water supply. And that means we really can't exempt mandatory safety standards and allow STAA trucks on that road and think we're protecting the safety of our tourist industry, the safety of our water supply, the safety of our recreational use of that facility, the safety to the fishing industry. We're not. We're just gambling that we're not going to have 2 giant trucks with 4 inches to spare because we exempted mandatory safety rules colliding into each other and dumping into the river. We've got to be honest about that. The Commission has spoken in the past about how really important it is to have a well-documented, reliable RTP plan to be eligible for all the funding opportunities. It's a competition to get this kind of monies, to get it in. Well, this re-release is very vague. It mentions, but it doesn't have any real data to it. And it's convoluted and it's vague. It's really a disappointment. It's a disappointment that it didn't address the original concerns at the public meetings. It's a disappointment that it hasn't even really been presented to the public with more public meetings to explain the differences in it. It doesn't really fit into any kind of environmental and social justice that is part of the criteria in creating an RTP plan. You're risking everything for getting bigger trucks to come in on this road that don't have any statistics to suggest how it's going to improve the economy of this county. You talk about this county as impoverished, and one of the big problems is getting impoverish people to their doctor's appointments and having public transportation. But you're not really addressing that in this redraft. It's it's focusing on the wrong things. So I would just like to see that last chance grade become a #1 priority and the emphasis of how you write this report. I'd like to see that you really do focus on the good of the people and that you can back it up with a statistical argument. Otherwise, I think we've wasted a whole lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Any other public comment? Okay. I'm going to close the public comment. I am going to ask staff to put on our next agenda a discussion of the process that we went through on the regional planning effort, the amount of public hearings, the way we redress public comments, and what we can expect in the process going forward.
Yeah, well, per our current schedule, it will already be on our agenda for next month. It just isn't time yet.
Okay.
So this is just an issue of timing.
Okay.
It's that indeed is our schedule, is that it will be, the document draft is re-released. We'll have a final document go to the TAC and to the Commission in the November meeting. That has always been our schedule.
Okay. So then it goes to the TAC and then comes back to us.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. And the TAC is the Technical Advisory Committee. All righty, thank you. So let's get to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda, which is,
Move to approve here.
oh, sorry, I need to adjourn to the Policy Advisory Committee and ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
I have a question.
Yes,
Can I remove an item?
sure.
Remove the minutes from the consent agenda?
Okay. Is there a correction there, or you just want to remove them?
Yeah, well, I had some questions about, there were some
Okay.
issues with it, so I wanted to make sure.
All right, so let's, there's a motion and a second, I believe, on items B and C on the consent agenda, which is approving the FTA programming section, program funds, the amount of about $138,800, and the local agency allocation agreement with the Elk Valley Rancheria. Any public comment on those items? Back to the board.
Transportation Assistance Program for Healthcare. I don't have that on mine. Oh, I don't have the updated on that on. I'm behind the.
We do have a D. I sent the agenda out actually twice on over the weekend. I can't remember, maybe
Oh,
even on
okay.
Friday. I had just missed item D on the first
D is
agenda.
right, the Transportation Assistance Program for Healthcare.
Right.
Okay. So, to clarify, consent agenda is items B through D, and we will pull for discussion the minutes. Any public comment? Back to this board, any clarifications, comments, questions? Pull the vote, please.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Public, or Policy Advisory Committee Member Tucker?
Yes.
And Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Chairman Finnegan?
Yes. So we're going to go back and visit item A, which were the minutes of September 8th, 2016.
Yes,
What you
thank
got?
you. So I did notice a few statements for my colleague David Morgan. Unfortunately, he's been out of the office all week, so I was hoping that we could, I don't know if we can vote on it later, if that's okay, or should I?
We can bring it back for approval at the next meeting.
Yeah.
If that's all right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put that on the next agenda.
Thank you.
Let's go into the policy administrative discussion items. Number one up is US Highway 199 Elk Valley Crossroad intersection.
Kevin, do you have any information about this? We have agreed to leave it on our agenda until we find some real resolution for it. We're expecting a traffic count in September at that location. I haven't had a report that that's happened, but I anticipate that it has. And then we will do another traffic count in July of 2017.
Supervisor Howard, anything on that?
No, and that was my understanding also. I had hoped David Morgan moved forward with that
increased level of scrutiny in the month of September with the fall through in July of next year,
Yeah.
with the idea that we could pick up the more concentrated periods of travel within that intersection, because obviously the reports that were done in the past were really during peak periods of travel within that area.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's my understanding that David Morgan is moving forward with that. Unfortunately, he's been out of the office all week, so I didn't get to confirm that, but yes, September and then July is what he agreed to, and the information will be shared, after the July count. We can share that information with.
Yeah, so Chris, by email, I can get a confirmation from him that it happened and report back in November.
Correct. And Chair, we also had some email exchanges with Caltrans specific to this discussion item, and really reflecting back on potentially close calls. I mean, we only hear about the really, really bad that ends up taking place, but not a whole lot of information takes place on the near misses that occur at those intersections. And, I personally experienced 2 in the last month. My question for you, Director Layton, is David Morgan had recommended a format for potentially reporting that type of information in his email response to us. Maybe you could elaborate on that potentially for us.
I have an idea about how to capture that information with the community. That's under discussion items for public information and crowdsourcing. So we could talk about that now if you'd like, or we can wait till later.
Go ahead and touch on it.
Well, I will be updating the overall work program for the current year, and when discussing with Commissioner Howard how folks could participate, we talked about some of the folks who live in that area, maybe, working with a Facebook page, setting something up to make it easy for folks to report near misses, something that we can collect. I think that Mr. Morgan was mostly just talking about any kind of informal reporting. Anything that you see you want to report, then please do so, either to him directly or to me, and I can accumulate a number of reports and submit them at once. And then I was at a state meeting representing the state pedestrian and bicycle plan for rural counties just a few days afterwards, and we were talking about crowdsourcing and some of the platforms that are available to governments for accepting information from folks very easily through a cell phone. And I'm thinking about bringing this to the TAC, putting together a work element. I've already started on it, and adding to our existing work element for our website and information, and including some kind of development of a crowdsourcing tool that we can distribute or make available for free to members of the public. That would be a Del Norte crowdsourcing tool, and you could comment on anything that you wanted transportation through that crowdsourcing. Most of the tools will put a pinpoint on a map. You can put your comments in there, and it all happens online and through this mapping tool. So we end up with a community map that collects information as we go along, rather than when we're talking about a project specific. And the benefit for us is that we would be able to have an accumulation of public input over time, rather than more focused public input at the beginning of a study or a project, something like that. So I think that in addition to that, it would just be an additional way for folks to easily make a comment on a transportation problem or success, whatever, in our community. So I'm hoping that that will be included in the OWP update for our current year, and that would be completed by June of 2017 and available to the public.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So with the pinpoints, that would be where you would go in and comment, say, on the 199, 197 project? Or, so we'd have a focus on where a person wanted to make the comment?
It's more about, I am here and this is what I see.
Okay.
I am here riding my bicycle on Elk Valley Road, and this just happened to me. Or I'm here riding my bicycle on Elk Valley Road and nothing happened to me and it was just a very pleasant ride. Or I am, here at Pebble Beach Drive and the road is collapsing in this area, whatever. But your phone itself puts the pinpoint down. They aren't necessarily identified projects or current topics or anything like that. It's just a way for folks to report with their phone identifying where they are. Their phone itself would put the pin down to identify their location.
Like Elk Valley Crossroad.
Right, at
Okay.
Elk Valley Crossroads. So somebody could just drop a pin at that location and say, I am here, this is what happened. So
Good
it's,
tool.
Yeah, I think it's, there are a lot of examples. I'm gathering some examples. We'll be taking a look at different methods and different tools that we can, purchase and use over time. But I think that it would be a very effective way to get accurate information about a variety of topics, some of which we might not even know about. And as I was saying before the meeting, it also provides a way for our more quiet people to provide input. And I expect that they have a lot of valuable things to say where they may not be comfortable coming to the meeting, speaking in the microphone. Their schedule may not allow for it, whatever.
Well, and promoting that too, even for the tourist that might be driving their Winnebago, or the person commuting to the doctor over in Medford that says, gee whiz, on Washington Hill, I just almost got run over by a Winnebago. Sure wish this road was wider here. Stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
Okay.
Hopefully, we're not promoting using your cell phone
While you're driving.
We are not promoting using your cell phone while
Well,
you're
what
driving.
we could do is tell them to pull over to those safe spots where the phones are, and then drop your pin.
There are places to pull over.
Yes.
There are ways to do that with a passenger in the car or to estimate where you are.
Yeah.
There are ways to report, and this is only one way to report. I mean, it's supplemental. It's not. It won't. It's not replacing any current way of reporting.
No,
it's
but it
just
goes a
supplemental.
long way towards supplementing that anecdotal information of near misses at 199 and Elk Valley Road and Parkway there. I think that would be beneficial.
That's certainly my primary concern right now, but there are lots of concerns over time. We have a lot of concerns about Highway 101 through Smith River. I think folks have a lot to say about that and would appreciate a platform.
Good. Anything else on 199 Elk Valley? Okay, it'll be on the agenda again next time. Let's get to 199 injury and fatality incidents, accidents that have happened recently.
Well, this discussion item is on the agenda at the request of Commissioner Howard. So we have had a series of injury and fatalities on US Highway 199. It has always been, data indicates it's always been our most dangerous highway. And I don't have any additional information that other folks don't have right now, but Mr. Howard may have something to.
Thank you, Chair. So I asked Director Layton to have this discussion point on the agenda again because I just so happened to be driving by the last 10.5 mile marker accident just after it occurred, saying to myself, wet, rainy period, after David Morgan came here to us a couple months ago and said, hey, we've put measures in place to help reduce whatever is occurring there, which we still don't know what is occurring there. And this location just so happens to capture another vehicle again on the first rainy day of the year. My thought process going forward is, what are we doing to expedite the ability from a car to transition off the alignment into the Smith River at that location, given the fact that whatever was put into place a couple months ago is still not correcting the issue?
So, well, I have a bit of additional information because Mr. Morgan did answer immediately, but his answer was that all of the countermeasures for that problem area have not yet been implemented, and he was having trouble getting the proper kind of pavement, and that it's being that what the project is being accelerated. I don't know, Kevin, if you have a more formal update.
So yeah, what we're talking about, they put in some chevrons, they put in some signs to advise people to slow down. The part that, is most effective is the high friction surface treatment, which is the problem we're having is getting that, originally we had scheduled that to do that sooner, and we ran into some challenges with, we weren't able to use our maintenance staff to do the work, and so now we're going through the contracting process to get a contractor out there. I don't have any new information from what, David Morgan shared last time, but they are, we are in the process of getting a contract in place so that the contractor can get out there and apply the high friction surface treatment, which is a pretty effective tool, regardless of, what might be causing some of the things that are going on there. High friction surface treatment is really effective at addressing a lot of potential issues. So we're hoping that will, be able to get that out there soon and try to address some of the issues.
Do we have an idea what's going on there? Why cars continue to be captured at that location?
I can't answer that. I'm not an engineer, and I wouldn't begin to try to answer what might be some potential issues. There's a lot of things that go into an analysis of that stuff. CHP and our traffic safety engineers spend a lot of time looking at that stuff. So unfortunately, I can't provide you any specific information at this time.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I know it is a severe irony that at that area where there's been a reoccurring people going in the river, it seems to be one of the widest spots with the biggest turnout. With the visually, it opens itself up. Maybe that in and of itself is a distraction. I think going to the open pavement or the traction that you're
High friction surface.
high friction surfaces obviously will help, but there really is no cure for stupidity when people speed in the rain either. So, I mean, it's a combination of things. Unfortunately, most of the accidents didn't happen in the rain over the summertime, so there's an issue there, and we'll keep it on the agenda and get an update next time as to the safety measures that are in place and a timeline for those that aren't in place that will be. Okay?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Someone was, I was telling, we were talking about the guardrails and how they would cause ricochet effect, and that would be less safe than nothing at all. But someone suggested perhaps some boulders in that area. I don't know if that is something that might be more effective or not, but I said I would mention it today, so I'm just bringing that up.
Thank you. Is this public comment?
Safety and Highway 199. This is something that also is guided in our regional transportation
Okay,
plan.
now I'm going to not give you two bites of the apple. I'm going to let
Okay.
you comment on the safety, the accidents and the injuries
Right.
on 199.
That's correct. And
Okay.
the accident occurred, and there were actually two accidents on 199 recently.
Those three.
There was one at the 10.56, which is the problem area that you're talking about. And there was also an accident in the paper listed at 8.5, or approximately. This is a dangerous highway. These locations are outside of the fixes for STAA traffic. And it is been our position that this highway is no place for big trucks. And it will just make the safety issues that we have now worse.
Instead of yelling at me,
Okay.
was there a
All
big
right.
truck involved in any of these accidents?
No, but that point
Thank you.
is that this is dangerous
Okay.
highway. You put in bigger trucks, and you're asking for more problems. And when we evaluate where we're fixing places, what projects we should prioritize as far as safety is concerned. The overriding concern is how, this is a perfect example, is how many accidents occur in a place. That should be the guiding principle of where we prioritize for safety. And I will just reference, keep that in mind when you read our new plan, because it doesn't focus on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wants to comment on this specific item that has to do with the accidents and the injury accidents that recently occurred on 199? No? Okay, then we're going to, anything else? Think we have clear direction on this? Let's go to the next item for discussion, which is last chance grade. And
Our project manager, Sebastian Cohen, is here to provide an update for us.
good. Welcome, Sebastian.
Good afternoon. My name is Sebastian Cohen with Caltrans, and I'd just like to say thank you guys for inviting me up to give an update. I will comment on that last subject matter, even though I didn't stand up during that high friction surface treatment that he talked about is extremely impressive stuff. It's a major step forward, and we would be putting it down with our maintenance forces as he talked about, but it's almost done with an epoxy type treatment, and the vapors are something that our labor forces are not allowed to use. That's the current delay, and that's why it's having to go out to a project that gets advertised and goes through the normal process. But we've used it at a few locations, and if, lack of friction is the issue at this location, it will be solved. Again, you never know what's occurring. Sounds like it's not a lack of shoulder width. I'm not familiar with the location, but if friction is the issue, it will be solved by this stuff. So it's be a very large step forward. We used to use dense grade, then we went to open grade, and it was a step forward, but this is almost a very large step forward. It's very, very aggressive stuff. So it's almost too aggressive. You don't want to fall riding your bike, let's put it that way. So I'm here today, though, to give you an update on last chance grade and then answer any questions you have. I've heard a lot of information flying around about last chance grade that I read or hear about that's kind of incorrect. So if you have any questions about numbers or timeline or anything like that, I'm free to answer that as well. But my main update will be on the existing site, the emergency project that's going on out there, as well as the bid project that's going on out there. Right now we're building 2 walls that's under a bid contract, and basically give you just kind of an update about what we see moving forward about maintaining last chance grade to keep it open and safe, because that's obviously our #1 priority. And then at the same time, we're obviously looking to the future, trying to find a permanent fix, and I'll give you an update about where we're at and the status of that. So first of all, what's going on out there right now, the bid project, the 2 walls, one of the walls is essentially about 90% complete. They just need to finish some tiebacks and final paving and put some shoulder width back. So one of the walls is essentially, a majority of it is installed. The second wall is just kind of got underway. So the weather could be experiencing some weather delays because the type of wall it is. But basically that project, the bid project of the 2 walls, should be wrapped up, I'd say no later than late January, sometime in January. By February 1st, we expect it to be complete and done. The emergency project that...
Can I interrupt you just a second?
Sure.
Does that mean that then the stoplights will be removed by 1st of February? Is that what we're projecting up on the last chance?
That traffic control will change.
Okay.
We may not have a signal, but we will have traffic control in place, because something else I'm about to tell you about.
Sorry.
Yep, no
I'll
problem.
let you finish.
Yep, no problem. It's a good question. So that bid project is going on, and obviously, as you know, all these small slip outs are right next to each other out there, one problem after another along that grade. And the emergency project that we have going on from last year, it's stretched into this year, is to repair that retaining wall number 3 that I previously provided you guys an update. That's the one that kind of split apart that everyone sees. It's above the highway. We are still performing repairs to that, and we're working on extending a wall that's on the downhill side across the road from that, because that is essentially the area of our greatest concern for the near future, meaning like the next 5 years. That's the area that we're concerned about, any movement that could potentially cause a closure. Because obviously our number one goal again is to keep it open and safe. So we're proactively doing everything we can out there while we find a funding for a permanent solution. Other additional measures that we plan to be installing and that we're actively working on is installing a more reliable communication and power source, because as I've explained before, power is a long ways away. Solar doesn't work very well out there for large power draw needs, and communication is hit and miss. Verizon and US Cellular are hit and miss. Some work in some locations and some work better in other. Big thing that we're trying to do is get some cameras installed so that you can go on the website and see a live feed. And that is something that we would like for a variety of reasons. The public has asked for, and we have that at a lot of locations around our district, at a lot of intersections of major routes, and it's something that will be very helpful. And Parks is looking for that too. We may be able to add an additional camera so they can try to stop some dumping that's occurring out there. So that's one of the reasons why we want reliable power. We also want to be able to install slope lighting for if we have something occur out there that we can light it up during the nighttime. And then we're looking at putting in some message boards, small, like 4x8 changeable message signs, so we can put up signs instead of the general small little triangular signs that everyone kind of gets dead to after they see them too many times. So something that kind of piques people's, draws their attention to it. And then the monitoring system that we have in place, we're looking at upgrading that, maybe using a different technology. We're having a lot of maintenance is having to go into what we're using, and there are some limits to it. So we're looking at adjusting and trying to use a different technology. So that's what we're looking at as far as the ongoing emergency effort, and over this winter what we plan to do. Now obviously we will respond to anything that occurs. We have an emergency contract in place already, so anything that occurs, it won't be up to our maintenance forces. They already have support of an emergency contractor, so that's good news. So for a permanent solution, which is essentially a new alignment, as everyone knows, we've produced now a couple different documents Caltrans has. We've got basically 6 build alternatives that we're looking at, several working groups that are meeting. There's a lot of progress has been made in a variety of ways from these working groups, and I've said before many times that once we get funding, the real benefit of these working groups is really going to be seen in a variety of ways. What we're after right now, I think everyone knows that the issue is funding. Once we get funding, then we can start talking about timeline. Funding has to come first, and in this day and age, it's so hard to get funding to this magnitude, of any magnitude really. Funding is based off gas taxes, and I think everyone knows that politically right now it's a big issue how we're going to replace the decreasing funding that's been coming with it, that we've been seeing, because our gas tax revenue is disappearing, and there's lots of, at the federal level and state level, lots of ideas floating around, as well as there's lots of bills floating around that could new money could come into the scene. But until then, our only avenue is to go after emergency relief funding. And to that end, we were lucky enough, I guess is the right way to put it, that we got a federal declaration last year. It opened up the emergency relief program, which allows FHWA to fund, first of all, they give us funding to basically compensate us for whatever efforts we did to immediately get the road back open. So that's the kind of the work we're doing right now, to immediately stabilize the site. And then they will fund what they call a permanent restoration project. But that permanent restoration project, they specifically say no new alignments, no betterments, which is something as simple as a wider shoulder, and there's a dollar cap. So in this project, of course, is outside all three of those requirements. So we would need a large exception for them to allow ER funding to be used for this location, for this type of project. Once we got that ER funding, we held a high-level meeting in Sacramento with the state division of FHWA and Caltrans management all the way up to the top, and it was a very productive meeting. They could have said immediately, no way, it's a pre-existing condition, it's on the state it's on the state Department of Transportation, Caltrans, to find a solution. We're not going to fund it because the ER program is just for emergency relief. For a variety of reasons, I feel that they are proactively working with us. They, however, explain that to get approval of something like this, it needs to go through Washington, D.C., the headquarters of FHWA, and they are going to be a challenge for us for a variety of reasons. And what they wanted to do, and what they basically told us is, here's what we need from you guys to be able to have a robust application that has a chance of being approved. And it's basically, comes down to a variety of things that kind of get specific, but for the most part, it's working with their geotechnical specialists out of Colorado, installing some additional geotechnical subsurface data acquisition instrumentation and measuring that at least over a winter. We're actively working on getting that installed. And then a site characterization of the entire mountain, if you will, the entire last chance grade, not just what we have to date, which, anytime we've had an emergency out there, we go out there and we characterize the site, we drill it, we find what type of wall it's needed to keep that in place. They want a more holistic approach of the entire range before they'll consider basically proof that it's infeasible to keep the existing alignment where it's at. So they want a robust application. So good news is they want to work with us, and they are working with us. The bad news is it's going to take some more effort, which we are currently doing. So it was a good meeting. It really was. It was, I think, some Congressman Huffman's effort and others, and I know that it's a well-known issue in Sacramento, which has made it, I think, really helped the meeting be successful. So, the division of FHWA in Colorado are actively working with our geotech folks, and with this winter, that data instrumentation will be installed and some measurements will be taken. However, that power issue that I was talking about has to be in place first, and we're working on a couple issues with that. That could be very expensive, so that's currently a delay, but we're actively working on it. As far as this 5-year plan I keep hearing about, that really is not feasible for a variety of reasons. First of all, the funding has to be in place first, and the only way you could get something done in 5 years is if NEPA and CEQA laws didn't exist, and that's just not the case. They exist, and those are going to be the timely issues that take us a while. So once we get funding, the environmental studies that we've estimated from 3 to 5 years, if they happen 3 years, that could be great. And that may happen because of these working groups that we have. You never know what they're going to find, but they're actively, right now, still working with us, even though the project isn't funded. If we weren't doing that, it could end up being 5 years. So that is an issue that we really can't accelerate. The design part, you can always throw more designers at it and kind of accelerate the design phase, but the environmental phase just cannot be accelerated. So once we get funding, then we can start talking about schedule, but you still have that environmental phase. So funding is key, then the environmental phase, and then design. One last thing that I'll point out is that along with Huffman applying pressure like he has been doing, he also has been working actively to get Congressman DeFazio down here to review the site and do a flyover. And I'm being told that that is looking like it's probably going to happen in the near future. There's no date set, and it's not completely assured, but yesterday I talked with John Driscoll, and it sounds like in the near future, hopefully there'll be a flyover with DeFazio and Huffman. So that will help get additional congressmen involved, which could hopefully get approval of the funding. Because keep in mind, even once the ER program was to approve our funding, it will take congressional action to approve it because of the dollar amount. So it would be the same as if we passed legislation giving ourselves money, a unique bill. The ER, if the ER funding comes through, it will take a congressional action, but it will be attached to an existing bill. But having DeFazio involved will help, and I believe that's why Huffman has been so active in getting him down here. So some good progress, still actively working on it. But project of this size, it takes quite a while to get to where we want. But funding, then environmental phase, then design phase.
Questions from commissioners?
So Sebastian, the site characterization, what exactly does that entail? Is it NEPA and CEQA, and then, or just the drilling that?
No, they want some additional, it involves a few things. They want additional failure planes known at various areas.
Okay.
They want some groundwater depths, and they want groundwater depths monitored over time. And that's gonna, before when we've performed that, we have seen, I'll just give you an example. We have drilled one side of the highway, and about 30 feet over and across the road we've drilled, and we've gotten about 35 to 40 feet difference in elevation of groundwater. And that is because the type of geology that's out there. It's the broken formation, as I've explained before. It's the large boulders with small failure planes in between them, so the groundwater can fluctuate. So it's going to be a challenge to get groundwater data, but we have, like I said, we're actively working with them on the type of instrumentation, and then we can hopefully get that data and compare it as the site moves this winter, because we know it's going to move. The deep failure planes are always moving regardless of time of year, even when it's dry. The smaller nested failure planes are the ones that really take off with the rainy season.
Do you want to real briefly touch on the parallel tracks that are going? I mean, I know that out of the $100 million on the emergency federal highways money, it can be attached as a rider to an existing bill to access some of that. You talked about some of the environmental work not contracted, but being done by some of the partners. And then can some of this federal emergency money be used, and when will that trigger be pulled for some of the environmental as well as we talked about perhaps core drillings on the backside, see where we're going.
So you just covered a lot of issues there. I'll try best to, I think I know where you're going or what you're after. When we have a federal declaration, a proclamation from the governor, and we get a federal declaration, and when the ER program is initiated, and again, FHWA, then there's two categories on a project. There's what they call emergency opening, and that's where they reimburse us immediately for whatever we do on site to get and keep the road open and safe. And then they pay to have you develop what they call a permanent restoration. So there's emergency opening, EO, and PR, permanent restoration. The future project, the final project, will be a permanent restoration project. Now, to get that, they're telling us that they want us to have, for your application for that, you need all of these things. We are being allowed to install some of that under the emergency opening project, as well as, because of the working groups, we're working with state parks, and we're actually having them go out and look at some issues on some of the alignments that we have looked at in our previous documents. So there's a lot of proactive work being done by a lot of agencies that normally won't even start working with us until we have a funded project. So I met with Jeff Bonke yesterday, and we're working on some stuff that he's having his staff do for us now that will help us with our application, as well as once we get funded in SEPA and NEQA. In our meeting with FHWA that we had in Sacramento, and again, the emergency opening is occurring now, we did ask if we could try to do some of the drilling and do some of the NEPA and CEQA work for some of the alignments that we've already, the 6 build alignments that we've looked at in our previously developed documents, and they turned us down on that. Because that is where, again, that's going to be the controlling item once we do get funded, that 3 to 5 years, if we could shrink that down. And that's something you don't want to take the short route on that. As you've seen, your 199 STA bridge, it's minor issue really in a document, and it gets the project suspended and not built, and you're back spending millions redeveloping it. When the impacts don't change, it's more of a, you want to make sure your ducks are in a row on NEPA and CEQA.
And before I turn it over to somebody else, real briefly, without getting us both in trouble here, we got it down to probably 3 alternatives, and then it got bumped back up to 6, plus the no build, which we all agreed is not an option, but it still has to be there for legal reasons. When the work is being done with the federal highways now, and they want to assess the dewatering, whether it's possible, which they already know that it can't be, but they have to justify it. They're going to be looking out the side of their eye at least at some of the 6, 7 alignments. Can they, so where's the delicate balance between not being able to document it and being able to do some work under dewatering and assessments that might be able to be used later? Or is that something we should talk behind closed doors?
No, I don't think, FHWA, again, the California division is really working with us, trying to get funding for us for a future project. Okay. And they really have to keep it simple and just say, you need to show us that it's infeasible to do a large project on the existing alignment.
So then will it be federal highways that will then come in after that determination is made and documented? Will then come in and use Caltrans project study report and help narrow down the alternatives?
Yeah, so what we agreed to in our meeting in Sacramento is that we will do this additional site characterization, additional data collection of certain groundwater and a couple other things, develop this report, and then we will put together a panel of specialists from across the country that will review and give a opinion as to is it feasible or not. And that is an excellent thing, because I believe, as everyone does that's around here, lived around here, we've been dealing with this since it was built. A permanent solution on the existing alignment is not feasible, just from what we can see and have experienced. but we've got to be able to document it. So once we put together this panel of experts, once we've done this additional requirement, this panel of experts will give an opinion, and that will help us have a robust application, as I called it, to FHWA in Washington, D.C., and essentially get the money. But what we're really doing is asking for an exception, because again,
Right.
the ER program doesn't allow new alignments, doesn't allow betterments, and has a $100 million cap, and we're way over that.
And you may not have the specific answer to this because I'm way past. I'm doing the assumptions as quickly as we can, which we all agreed on. We'll go down that path. Will it be this same type of panel of experts that will then look at the alternative once all these other determinations have been
No.
made, or will it go back to Caltrans or
It'll go back to that.
or federal
that-
highways?
No, that is just for the application process.
Okay.
Once we get the money, then we basically start from scratch as far as development. Now, we have the 6 alternatives that a lot of work has been done. They will be analyzed, but via NEPA and CEQA, they could very well,
Right.
and likely are, tweaked and adjusted.
Okay.
As the geotech studies and drilling comes in, as all the environmental studies come in, and there's a lot of issues out there, not to mention the old growth redwoods. And not only is it a national park, but it's a World Heritage Site, which is a whole nother level of issues. So, and we asked, I'll just let you know, this is another very positive aspect of our meeting in Sacramento, is that Federal Highways does have a design group that can assist. They need to have a nexus, a national park or a federal forest or something. We posed to them that given that this is a national park, that they may, if we do get the money, that they could be assistants or even the lead on the design, and that is something that was not turned down. I'll leave it at that, and that would be a huge benefit.
Well, excellent. You've answered my questions. You and I have had conversations, and maybe I know more than I should, and I know you certainly do too, so I'm going to open it up to some other people that have some questions that haven't been answered.
Well,
But I
no.
know there's an amazing amount of progress that has been
Yeah.
made, especially behind the scenes, and this is on the fast track.
Yeah, it is. Given the challenges and the site, it is pretty impressive. It doesn't look like it. A lot of people want it done a lot faster, and I completely understand that, and we all do. But the laws are the laws. And first of all, we got to get the money.
Right. Commissioner Hawley.
Yeah, hi Sebastian, good to see you again. I think we can all acknowledge that there's a large segment of the population that's really anxious about going over last chance grade. So I appreciate the fact that you're improving the technology on last chance, including the live feed. When this monitoring process first came to our attention, there was an idea that perhaps with monitoring, if there was a serious or catastrophic event, there could be an automated system that would stop traffic in both ends. And I understood that that was going to be problematic later, but it seems like if we have to wait for a safety officer of some kind to get there and declare an emergency and stop the traffic, there's a lag time there. And I was wondering, with these new changes and these upgrades that you're going to be doing, is there a possibility that we get that kind of a system?
We looked to answer your question, the answer is no as far as gates that come down automatically, and there's a variety of reasons why. We have had that in place after Loma Prieta, earthquake safety on bridges became a big issue, and we tried to use that technology on bridges. After there was an event, an automatic gate would come down, and it ended up causing a lot of issues, and there's a lot of liability with it, and it's something that there's better options is what has been determined. Now, there are other things that can be done. We definitely could put in gates that maintenance could shut themselves and close. But what we can have, and the automated system that we did put in, the monitoring system, is measuring if there's a catastrophic event. And we do get notified. We then could trigger a message sign that says something and lights that go on. But as far as an automatic device that came down and stopped traffic. I believe the answer honestly is no to that. There are other measures in between that we are looking at installing. Lights, signs, notification, and honestly, I think that given the type of failures we see out there, the catastrophic failure that we use, I think that's the wrong term given this site. We see small failures. Now they keep growing and growing, and that's not to say that we could have, I mean, if you're in a lane that falls away, it's catastrophic to you. But overall, we've seen small rates of movement, and so we have some warning if the lane is going to go down, and we'll be out there taking action. So we feel that the risk is low, and that's why there's so many walls in there. The walls are to mitigate these nested failure planes, which are the ones that tend to move a little bit faster. And that's why we have one additional location that's come up where we feel could use a wall and mitigate that location.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners, questions? No? I'm going to, if you don't mind, ask the audience if they have a question. I know we have a 5-year proponent sitting there just chomping at the bit, so anybody, member of the public, care to question the presentation? Please step forward and identify yourself.
Well, I actually would like to use 3 minutes to discuss last chance grade, but also...
Okay, well, before you do, then, do you have a question for Sebastian?
I have a question of why you chose to realign this highway and you did not look at the possibility of utilizing the ship.
Okay, so the question is, why are we choosing to realign the highway or look at realigning the highway instead of purchasing a ship and ferrying people from Klamath up to Crescent City? That will probably be a brief answer. Sebastian?
That's not a feasible alternative. Why is it not feasible? A variety of reasons. The maintenance costs, who's going to maintain such a facility? Who's going to pay for it?
Okay,
that's really not a real issue.
yeah, I'd hate to be on the ocean with this storm coming up too, so
Yeah.
I'm going
And
to let you
additionally-
pursue that at some other forum. Sebastian, thank you for your presentation, and look forward to seeing you at the next Congressional Stakeholders Group meeting. Thank you. Appreciate it. Public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Sebastian.
And identify yourself, please.
I want to thank this group and our politicals in the county for the work you're trying to do.
Identify yourself for the record, please.
Yes, Chuck Blackburn, former supervisor for Del Norte County and co-chair of the Last Chance Grade Bypass Committee with Supervisor Gitland and also Kurt Stremberg. Anyway, I'd just like to share some things that are going on with us, which are mostly behind the scenes. And each of us has kind of sat down and we've outlined the responsibilities of each of our little group. And that's been going on for 3 years. I must say with my participation, I had to use some of the communications as a former supervisor and also as a former chair of this very committee back in the middle of 2000s. I had the opportunity to meet and work with for 2 years a gentleman in the Federal High Administration named Gary Strike, who's now in the hierarchy of the Denver office. And I finally made a contact with Gary within last month and had a tremendous conversation twice with him, and then further had conversations with Caltrans hierarchy down in Eureka, specifically Brad Meadham, who I highly respect, and Charlie Fiedler, who I understand is going to be retiring. But I'd like to thank Caltrans for the work that you've done and the effort, Tamara, to you also, in the public hearings. I think it's so important that we keep this out in the public. But anyway, my conversations with Gary Strike a month or so ago We've talked twice, and I was so thankful he called me back, and we shared some of the experiences on South Fork Road project, where he was project director before he was taken up into the regional office. And I had a good opportunity to share my experiences with Last Chance Grade and communications. Also put he and Brad Meadham in touch with each other, and that was a little less than a month ago. And I felt real good about that because I thought maybe this would open up a good line of communication. And I found out that Gary Strike did not really know very much about Last Chance Grade project, so he contacted the Sacramento office that I'm sure Caltrans is working directly with. And my feeling is, after working with both of these gentlemen, that there are things going on, and I know it's complex, as as was just shared. But I wanted to share that with you, and I appreciate your listening to my opportunities that we see ahead of us. We're all in the same boat. We want to see this solved. My real question is, if it goes tomorrow, do we have to go through all of these various sundry things that must be done? And that is a big question that I still have not received an answer for. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to try to answer that, and I'm going to let myself be corrected by Sebastian. If that goes, which that's not the geologic that they feel, but if there's a catastrophic earthquake, and God forbid that it does happen, the charge of Caltrans and Federal Highways is to get the road open immediately. So there will not be a bypass. They will use the same alignment. They will bridge it if they have to, whether it's an Army Corps of Engineers Trundle Bridge or Expansion Bridge, whatever. They will cut back into the mountain as far as they need to stabilize the road, and it will be opened next to immediately. It may be a horse and buggy lane and expanded as time goes, but it will be opened immediately. The bad news that goes with that is that would have to be Federal Highways money that would have to go in to restore that road in place. And once that road and those kinds of millions are spent to restore it in place, it probably would put a severe hold on any discussions or money to study an alternate going around. Sebastian, I'll weigh in.
You're exactly right until the very end. I don't think it would put a severe hold. It actually could even a little more push to our argument for a future bypass.
Good.
Or realignment. Yeah. So we would basically do what he said. We would get the road reestablished as fast as possible. And the reality of that is digging back into the hillside. And because of the steepness and the fact that there's old growth redwoods parked right above is one of the issues that we're using to explain why a realignment is a good thing. One way or another, old growth redwoods are going to be impacted because we are at some point going to have to cut back into the hillside. And that's, we never know when that's going to happen. But at some point we will cut back into the hillside, and that puts old growth above us, at least the ones immediately right there, in jeopardy. So we would get it open, but yeah, we cannot just pick a new alignment that we've been studying and not go through NEPA and CEQA. The only thing, when there is an emergency declared or we are allowed to do what it takes to get the road open, we do have to get permits concurrently, which means we need to mitigate whatever we impacted, but you don't have to wait for permits. You kind of go through, you don't go through NEPA and CEQA. Essentially, you have a special route, but you still have to mitigate whatever you impacted. You're not allowed to just cut a new route, which is something that people have asked. If we do have a declaration, can we just pick one of these alignments? Okay. And the answer is no.
So to be more correct, then my answer should have been, you're going to open it up as quickly as possible with the maximum amount of resources and get it going again. But it will
minimum amount of resources.
Minimum, but it will not. It will not impact. Number one, you can't start going around, but it also will not slow down or minimize the effort to going
No,
around.
to be honest, I think
Okay.
it would hasten our argument. It would
Good.
assist our argument.
Good, thank you. Any other public comment on this issue? No greenhouse gases on last chance grade.
All right, I'm breathing.
And identify yourself again.
Eileen Cooper. In response to this potential catastrophic failure, from an environmental standpoint, it would be the worst scenario. Not only would we have the loss of old-growth trees along the current alignment, but we would also continue to need a complete bypass. So it would be a doubly bad impact to our old-growth environment, and very undesirable to have to do that. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And that really highlights or emphasizes why EPIC, Save the Redwoods, Friends of Del Norte, other environmental concerns are at the table to try to work through and agree upon an alignment to realign that road rather than impact further the old growth redwoods if we had to carve into the hillside. So thank you. So we're going to go ahead and leave that topic and go to, well, Tamara, I'm going to ask you to comment briefly and then we can put it on the agenda. Just notate that there is a handout that you gave for the status of Del Norte County projects as of September 2016. What is nice, although you won't like the timeline on it, you just have to trust that we're going to make this happen a lot quicker, is that last chance grade actually has been programmed now. While it is in the planning stage, correct? Or does, yes? So, excuse me, in the design stage.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, which is item number 4 on your, so that hasn't happened before, so that's nice.
It is, and the status of Del Norte County projects list, I received it well after the posting of the agenda. I can put it on the agenda for the November, if you'd like to see it there. Sometimes we have Caltrans come and answer questions about all of the projects. I can make that request and see if somebody's available, either for November or December meeting.
Why don't we do that? It's good to have a year-end report and a synopsis of what's going on and kick us off into the new year too. So that'd be great. So we'll put that on a future agenda. So Commissioner reports.
Just to add to that, I would like to note, because I need to do the math a second time because I did it quickly this morning, but not including last chance grade, that shows that there is $217,352,000 of projects that are in this status report. This isn't all the fund sources. This does not, that $217 million does not include last chance grade. There's a lot of work being done in our community right now, and so, you know, when you're taking a look at this document and thinking about questions, take a look at the dollar amounts, because that is a significant dollar contribution to our community that I think it's important to recognize, just to keep the highways open.
I'm glad you brought that up, and it is, for people who don't think that Caltrans or the Sacramento pays attention to Del Norte County in a lot of various areas, and it's due to a lot of the work of the people on this board as well as our staff to keep those personal connections open for the awareness of what's going on. That is a huge amount of money. While there are people, people complain, well, look at the condition of the roads. Well, guess what? We have the attention of people that are willing to fund to fix them, and that's what's important. So, very good.
Make a comment?
Yes.
So just a caveat, we had, when we developed this list, we tried to develop a list for each county where it's an effort by Caltrans to be more transparent. The caveat is that, we try to make sure all the information is correct, but, we do make mistakes. And, there's 30 projects in Del Norte County. It's a fairly small county. For instance, Humboldt County has, 250 projects. So it's a real challenge for us to try to provide information to the public and, keep them interested in what's going on. It's sometimes can be difficult to know, what projects might be interesting. So if you have an idea of, a specific project you want information on, let me know, and we can have project manager or somebody come up and talk about it.
Yeah, this is not by any means a comprehensive list. There are many other projects that are district-wide projects. There are other things happening, but just with this list alone, it's significant.
Okay. Very good. So let's go to commissioner reports. I'll start with, Tamara, I'll go ahead and start with you. Director's report, anything additional?
I have nothing further to report.
Kevin, anything?
Nothing.
No, sir. Good.
Deal committees?
I think I reported out the last night.
Okay. Rick, Catherine, Chris?
I'll just update briefly. I've been participating. I know this has been something that the chair has been participating in Sacramento, specific to figuring out how we're going to replace a lot of the lost revenue from the fuel tax. And the director encouraged all of us to participate in the programs essential to collecting that information and what it looks like. Now been in it for 2 months, and I've been receiving mock bills through one of the programs that was offered, which was called DriveSync. And even though I drove a total of 1,200 miles in the month of September, my charge above what I paid at the pump was only $2.63 for that mileage. Now I'm going through the motions of trying to figure out how it was all broken down, because it only breaks it down into 4 categories, which includes out-of-state miles and state miles and some other components. But I didn't think it was as big a hit as I really originally thought it was going to be when we started down this path. But I know some people may be concerned with the intrusiveness potentially of a program like that, because it's monitoring your location on a daily basis. But I know some of those concerns may be addressed by your committee in the future, Chair. But I thought I'd touch base on that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I use Azuga instead of, I think you're using the other one. And it GPSes me and tells me when I leave the state, so I don't have to pay for those miles used. But Supervisor Howard is exactly correct. Safety was our security, safety, security, privacy. And so there was you could do self-reporting, you could take pictures of your odometer, you can have it monitored by a third party. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can buy a timestamp at certain locations, but there's about 5,000. I think we had 7,500 people sign up. They wanted 5,000. Some people will leave, some people will join, so it's right at about 5,000. The rural counties are fairly well represented. So we should get a good handle on it. One of the meetings that I did go to was down in San Diego, was the Road Usage Charge Committee, which I sit on. We are scheduled to make a report back to the legislature, I believe, by March, and with perhaps any recommendations, and then it is up to the legislature to either make it work or screw it up. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but we were appointed by the legislature, authorized by them, because of a bill, and it's a good committee, and what happens with those recommendations really has nothing to do with the other transportation funding either. This is ongoing. This would be to replace the gas tax, not to supplement the gas tax. Which is an interesting idea at a time when Senator Beal's asking for gas tax to be increased significantly, which hasn't been done in decades, I think, or to ask for a $3 billion contribution out of the Caltrans, out of the state treasury, I think, but it takes $8 billion just to bring us back in. So anyway, we'll keep you in touch with that. And the only other thing I did...
I would just like to add, for anybody watching or in the room who has some questions about the privacy, there are options that you can select that do not track where you are.
Right.
So just to, be clear to anybody that there are all kinds of options, and if you don't want people to know where you are, then select one of those options. It seems to be easy to do.
It is. Very good. The only other thing I did is I was invited to make a presentation to the Sunrise Rotary regarding last chance grade, which I did. Sebastian isn't here anymore, but I didn't say anything that wasn't true. And that's basically what the presentation was. So it encompassed everything he had to say in the history of where we've been and where we're going. And fortunately, I got it right. So with that, we are going to ask for action on the recommendations of the Policy Advisory Committee. Can I get a motion, please?
To approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to, once we had adjourned to the Policy Advisory Committee, to take those actions as recommended by the Policy Advisory Committee. Any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Our next meeting will be November 20th, 11 o'clock. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. November 10th. Yeah, I'm sorry, I said 20th, didn't I? Okay, November 10th.
Yes.
For the, what